Millionaire leaves shocking will that revolutionizes contract with immigrant. The courtroom fell dead silent. All eyes locked on the judge's trembling hand as he unfolded the strange, yellowed papers. Sarah Johnson's heart hammered like a wild drum, pounding against the cold bench beneath her. Just months ago, she was wrapped in her husband's warm arms. Now she was clutching a future ripped apart by his sudden death. But this was something she'd never expected. A hush swept through the crowd when the lawyer read aloud the first line. "To the immigrant gardener who saved my life, I leave the entire estate with one condition." Gasps exploded. Whispers filled the air, sharp and confused. Who? What gardener? Here in this sleepy North Carolina town? Sarah's mind spun, the sudden weight of loneliness choking the breath from her lungs. Outside, rain battered the courthouse windows, slapping the bricks like wild fists. The sky was bruised purple, as if the storm brewing outside mirrored the storm inside her chest. Raw and restless. She glanced up, catching a glimpse of him. David. His rough hands twisted a worn leather strap on his boots, face hardened and shadowed by more loss than anyone dared to guess. A former war photographer, they said. A man haunted by ghosts as fierce as the storm. Everything inside screamed to stay away. But Sarah felt her feet pull towards him, drawn by the flicker of something fragile alive beneath his guarded eyes. Their eyes met for a split second, a crack in armor. Then a sudden crash shattered the moment as a neighboring window blew out, sending shards of glass into the courthouse foyer. The crowd scattered, shrieking. Later, on the edge of town, Sarah found herself standing in David's garden. A wild, tangled place where colors fought against the gray. He was kneeling beside a... David's knuckles whitened as he wrestled back a choke of memory. His wife's voice, her laughter, lost beneath years of silence. "Why'd you bring me here?" he asked, voice sharp with pain. Sarah swallowed hard. Maybe to start over. The wind carried a chill that night. The looming storm wasn't done. As the first flashes of lightning tore the sky apart, David handed Sarah a battered recorder. "She left this for me. I never listened." Before she could respond, he added with a hollow laugh, "Maybe you have something too. Something he never told you." Sarah nodded slowly, gripping the letter in her coat pocket. Her husband's final words, shining cold as ice in her shaking hands. Thunder roared like a beast awakening. Outside, the small town braced for a storm the like of which hadn't come in decades. But inside, two broken souls faced a storm no one else could see. Could they trust the fragile thread binding them? Or would the secrets buried in those voices from the past rip it all apart? As the rain surged against the windows, the power cut out. Trapped inside the fragile walls, with shadows creeping longer, Sarah and David stared at each other. Breath caught between fear and a desperate hope. Who had written those haunting messages? What truth lay hidden in the silence? And could two shattered hearts find a way to heal before everything fell apart? Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube canceled their subscriptions without warning. Just check out the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And while it helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love meeting all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes a difference. Let's interact. As the thunder crashed outside, Sarah and David faced each other, shadows dancing across their pale faces. The darkness pressed in, thick and heavy, but the electricity in the air crackled with unspoken words. Heartbeats drummed in the silence, a fragile rhythm. Fear and hope intertwined. She gripped the letter tighter. "I need to know what he wrote," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling like the flickering light bulb overhead. David nodded, his expression unreadable. "Listen," he said softly, handing her the battered recorder. "This belonged to my wife. It might hold secrets, or maybe just echoes of the past." Sarah took a deep breath and pressed the play button. A crackle filled the air, then a familiar voice broke through the static. Laughter, mixed with soft whispers, and Sarah's heart ached, realizing it was her husband, a warmth wrapped in sorrow. But then the tone shifted. The laughter turned serious, laden with emotion. The woman on the tape began to speak about a garden, one not just of flowers, but of hidden truths. "There are things in this world that can't be erased. Things that can hurt you," she warned, her voice a haunting tune in the dark. "You were never meant to find out." Sarah's throat tightened. What did that mean? She glanced at David, but his eyes were like storm clouds, churning with something deeper. "What does she mean?" Sarah pressed, the weight of fear blossoming inside her. "What were you hiding?" Just then, the lights flickered and went out, leaving them submerged in darkness. Panic surged like a tide, and she reached for him, her palm brushing against his arm, seeking comfort. But before he could answer, a loud bang echoed from outside, followed by frantic footsteps rushing towards the building. The doors burst open, and a figure stumbled in, drenched and wild-eyed. It was a local sheriff, breathless and soaked to the skin. "There's been an accident," he shouted. "A car crash down by the bridge. There are victims." His next words stopped their hearts. They found a body, and the driver was... Who? Sarah's voice shook, propelled by sheer determination. David stepped closer, his expression shifting from anguish to horror. The sheriff swallowed hard. It was Jim, your husband. Time stood still. A gut-wrenching silence fell over them, fractured only by the distant crash of thunder. Sarah's world crumbled. Jim, the man she loved, the one she had been holding onto in her mind, was gone. The letter slipped from her fingers, echoing the finality of loss. But then the sheriff continued. He had a passenger, an immigrant gardener. They were on their way to help a woman. David recoiled, his face pale. What woman? Someone from his past. Someone he'd never left behind. Shockwaves rippled through. David had told her so much. But this was a shattering depth she hadn't expected. As the weight of the revelation settled in the air between them, Sarah looked into David's eyes and thought she saw something shift. Was it recognition? Was it betrayal? "Why didn't he tell me?" she whispered, voice cracking under the strain. "I didn't know," David said, shaken. "I swear to you." But as the room closed in with grief and confusion, the questions spiraled. The storm outside mirrored the tempest within. Who was the woman? What connection did Jim have with this gardener? And how deep did the lies run? As the chaos unfolded, Sarah felt the ground beneath her tremble. Relationships were fracturing, and secrets were clawing to the surface. What other truths would the shadows reveal before the storm passed? And as thunder rumbled ominously above, she knew nothing would ever be the same again. The air was thick with shock. Sarah felt her knees tremble as the sheriff's words hung in the silence like a weight too heavy to bear. Jim, her Jim, gone. A body. Just like that. Thunder rumbled again, a deep growl echoing her inner turmoil. David stood near her, his eyes wide, filled with a mix of horror and confusion. "What are we going to do?" Sarah whispered, her breath shaky. She could barely comprehend the reality crashing over her. The room spun, and the heaviness settled in her chest like lead. The sheriff's frantic voice broke through. "We need to go now. The bridge is blocked. Someone has to identify." "Stop," David said suddenly, his voice sharp like breaking glass. "Did you say Jim had a passenger?" "Yes," the sheriff nodded, eyes darting nervously. "An immigrant gardener. They were on their way to help a woman, but I don't have time to explain." "The woman!" Sarah urged, her heart racing. "Who is she?" There was a moment of hesitation, as if the sheriff was weighing his words. I don't know. Just someone from his past, I think." "We need to." David shot his hand out, cutting him off. "What if the gardener knows something? What if—" Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the entrance. The doors flung open again, this time swinging wildly. A figure stumbled in, drenched and wild-eyed. It was a man, soaked through, panting heavily. He locked eyes with Sarah and David, and her heart raced anew. "Where's Jim?" he rasped, voice ragged, as if he'd run a marathon. "I was with him. I need to find him." "Who are you?" David demanded, stepping forward, instinctually protective. "I'm Carlos," he exclaimed wildly, the rain cascading down his face. "The gardener. I was with him when—" David's face went pale. "You?" He took a step back, as realization crashed into him like a tidal wave. "You were the one he left for." "Yes, we were trying to save someone," Carlos breathed, urgency lacing his words. He wouldn't tell me much, just that it was someone he regretted leaving behind. Sarah's mind raced. Regrets? Secrets? What had Jim been hiding? Her fingers trembled as she tried to process it all. "Why didn't he ever tell me about you? About this?" Sarah's voice broke, a mixture of anger and pain swelling inside her. Carlos's eyes widened, desperation tearing through his features. "Because he thought she would only hurt you. She's dangerous." David took a step back, pulling Sarah slightly behind him. "What do you mean? Who is she?" Carlos looked between them, fear mingling with grief. "Her name is Sophia. Jim, he was trying to save her." A chill slithered down Sarah's spine. The name echoed in her mind, like a haunting melody she couldn't escape. "What do you mean, save her? From what?" "From a choice he made years ago. He thought he could change things, fix it all. But there are some games you can't win." This revelation felt like a punch in the gut. David's expression shifted from shock to understanding, and suddenly Sarah felt utterly exposed. Jim wasn't just a loving husband. He was a man with secrets that ran deep, tangled in webs she couldn't see. Just then, a loud bang, a crash of thunder, shook the old walls. And the lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness. The sounds of rain intensified, a cacophony drowning out their mounting fear. "Wait!" Sarah shouted, the darkness closing in around them. "What else aren't you telling us?" But as her words hung in the air, a deafening noise erupted, something breaking through the storm. A police siren wailing away in the distance. A voice echoed from the hallway, chill and cold. "Sheriff, we found something. It's important." Panic surged through Sarah. This wasn't over. The truth was still out there, lurking just beyond the shadows. Could it be possible? What other secrets lay hidden, waiting to unravel? She could feel the ground shifting beneath her, the storm outside matching the turmoil within. And suddenly, everything felt like a tangled web, begging to be untied. As the urgency mounted, Sarah felt sweat beading on her brow. Who was Sophia? What was Jim's past really about? She clutched the letter tightly, heart pounding against her ribs. Even within the turmoil, she felt that her world was only beginning to crumble. What would the next revelation bring? The storm was far from over, and neither was her quest for answers. As the echoes of the sheriff's voice faded, the air grew thicker with uncertainty. Holly's heart raced in a storm of confusion and fear. Who is Sophia? Why was Jin trying to save her? The question spun in her mind like a tornado's, leaving Sarah breathless. Carlos took a step closer, urgency etched across his face. He was helping her escape a threat from his past. Sophia was involved in something dangerous. A gang, maybe. Jim thought he could protect her. His voice trailed off, but the weight of the revelation pressed down heavily in the room. Time felt suspended, waiting, breathing, holding. Outside, the rain pelted the windows like angry fists, and thunder rumbled deep, matching the storm within them. Before anyone could speak, the sheriff's radio crackled to life, breaking the tense silence. "We're getting reports of a disturbance down by the bridge. We need backup." "Let's go," David barked, adrenaline surging through him. "We might still save Jim." Polly felt her heart drop. But what about the gardener? He was with him. Carlos's expression darkened. "I don't think he's safe. They won't just stop with Jim. They're after Sophia. If they know he was trying to help her." Suddenly, the sheriff turned, his face pale. "We need to be careful. If they're involved, we're at risk too." He glanced at the door, as if expecting something or someone to burst in. Just then, the lights flickered violently. Shadows danced on the walls, and in an instant, the power went out, plunging them into darkness again. A bolt of lightning lit up the room, revealing Carlos's terrified face. The silence stretched thin, taut like a wire, and Sarah's heart pounded loudly in her chest. "Everyone stay calm," the sheriff commanded, but his voice trembled. Just as he finished speaking, a loud crash resonated from the entrance, making everyone jump. "Get down!" David shouted, instinctively pushing Sarah to the floor. A figure staggered into the room, drenched and wild-eyed. The sheriff's face went white. "No, it can't be." But it was. Jin stood there, soaked to the bone, his clothing torn and bloodied. The room fell into stunned silence. He looked different, haunted, like a ghost out of a nightmare. "Kim!" Sarah gasped, half expecting him to dissolve into mist. He shook his head, eyes frantic. "They're coming. You all need to leave. Now." "What happened?" David demanded, stepping forward. His protective instincts flaring. "They're after her," Jim whispered urgently, pointing a trembling finger at Carlos. "Sophia is in danger, but it's more complicated than I thought. You have to listen to me." Suddenly, a piercing scream split through the thunder. The sheriff's radio crackled to life again, chaos spilling through the static. "Sheriff, shots fired. We need assistance. There's a hostage situation." The room erupted into panic. "This is all my fault," Jim murmured, eyes darting around, desperately seeking their trust. "I should have told you everything, Sarah." "What do you mean?" She stepped back, confusion swirling in her gut. "What aren't you telling me?" But just then Carlos shouted, "We can't stand here. We have to find Sophia and get out." And as he spoke, another loud crash echoed through the building. This time, a gunshot. Glass shattered somewhere in the distance, and adrenaline surged through them all. "Go! Get to safety!" Jim yelled, pushing Sarah toward the door. "You don't understand the danger waiting for you." In that instant, everything shifted. Was Jim truly the hero, or hiding something darker? Then, as if the universe decided to throw another twist their way, a figure stepped into the doorway. It was a woman, bounding in from the rain with an intensity that stole breaths. "I'm here. She caught her breath, hair plastered against her face. "I'm Sophia." Everything froze. The storm outside roared, drowning out their collective shock. A heartbeat of silence stretched out as the realization settled, and it didn't just change the course of the moment, it unraveled everything. Sophia wasn't just a name. She was the thread connecting all their lives, potentially weaving a tapestry of truth that could either save or shatter them. Who was she really? What secrets did she hold that could alter everything they thought they knew? Suddenly, uncertainty filled the room. What truths were waiting to be uncovered? The kind that could devour them all. Sophia burst through the doorway, dripping wet and gasping for breath, and the tension in the room shifted. A wave of relief washed over Sarah, but it crumbled quickly under the weight of confusion. Who was this woman? She wasn't just the ghost of Jim's past. She was part of a living, breathing nightmare. The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside Sarah's heart. "Where's Jim?" Sophia's eyes darted around the room, panic etched deep across her face. "Right here!" Jim shouted, stepping forward, his expression a mix of worry and relief. "Sophia, you shouldn't have come here." "Don't you get it? They're coming for me!" she yelled, cutting through the chatter like a knife. "What are you talking about?" David stepped in front of Sarah, shielding her with his body. "Who's coming for you?" But before Sophia could answer, there was a loud crack from outside. A gunshot echoing through the rain-soaked streets. Everyone froze, a heartbeat of silence hanging thick in the air. Out of nowhere, Carlos lunged to the window, eyes wide with fear. "They're here!" he shouted. "We have to move, now!" Sophia lunged for Jim, desperation seeping from her pores. "If they find us together, it's over. You don't understand what's at stake." "Tell us then!" Sarah's voice trembled, adrenaline coursing through her. "What does that mean?" Before Jim could respond, the front door slammed open again. A shadowy figure stood there, drenched and menacing. It was Marcus, Jim's old enemy. The face anyone would recognize in a town soaked in whispered rumors and fear. "Found you!" he growled, his voice low, each word heavy with intent. "Sophia!" Jim moved to shield her, body tense. "Get back!" Marcus smirked, eyes gleaming with menace. "You're too late, Jim. You think you can play the savior? This isn't your story anymore." In that moment, tension snapped like a taut string. Carlos pulled out a knife, heart racing, ready to defend. "I won't let you hurt her." Suddenly, chaos erupted. The lights flickered as another gust of wind shattered the window, sending shards of glass flying. In the confusion, Jim lunged towards Sophia, desperation fueling every movement. But before he could reach her, she twisted away, face pale. "Jim, you don't know! You don't know who I really am!" she screamed, panic lacing her words. "What are you talking about?" David shouted, confusion spreading like wildfire. Then, in a moment that rocked Sarah to her core, Sophia looked at Jim with tears in her eyes. "I'm not just some woman from your past, Jim. I'm your sister!" Silence crashed through the room, harder than the storm outside. Shock rippled through everyone. Faces mirrored confusion, disbelief, and denial. Sarah's stomach dropped. Every piece of their world felt like it just shattered into a million fragments. What did you just say?" Jim's voice was barely a whisper, hanging in the air like poison. "I was taken when we were kids. You thought I was gone forever. I thought you were dead." Sophia burst into tears. "But I've been searching for you, and I finally found you, only to drag you back into this hell." The truth thudded heavily around them. Jim staggered back, bracing against the wall, clearly shaken. You're my sister? All these years?" Marcus laughed coldly, his presence suddenly more terrifying than before. "And you thought you could hide? You're right where I want you, Sophia. The game is over." In that breath, everything spun out of control. Relationships unraveled before their eyes. Trust shattered. And the looming storm outside suddenly felt insignificant compared to the tempest brewing in that single revelation. Who was Sophia really? A sister? An ally? Or part of a dangerous game that had ensnared them all? Uncertainty twisted in Sarah's gut. And as they all stood there, heartbeats racing, breaths held, the shadows around them deepened. The storm might be less ferocious than the storm inside. One that could tear apart everything they thought they understood. With a chilling clarity, Sarah wondered, the truth, however painful, was it really liberating? Or merely another chain binding them all to a fate they hadn't chosen? Sophia's words hung in the air like a ghost refusing to leave. "I'm your sister," echoed in Sarah's mind, relentless and terrifying. The silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Jim staggered back, as if the foundation beneath him had cracked. "Your sister?" His voice shook, a mixture of disbelief and confusion. "But I thought you died so long ago." Sophia's eyes brimmed with tears. "I was taken. I've spent my whole life looking for you." Then, just as tension reached a breaking point, the deafening crash of thunder reverberated outside, shaking the old courthouse. The rain pounded harder, the world outside a blur of chaos, mirroring the emotional storm raging inside. "We don't have time for this," Carlos shouted, desperation tinging his voice. "They'll be here any second." Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the hallway, a cacophony that made everyone flinch. The door burst open, and in strode a squad of officers, their commanding figures parting the chaos like a knife through butter. "Everyone, get down!" one shouted, raising his weapon. Confusion morphed into instant fear. Weapons drawn, the officers scanned the room, assessing the intensity of the situation. "Who's the threat?" one officer barked, as the other agents followed his lead, eyes darting among them as if looking for the enemy lurking in their midst. "Marcus, he's dangerous!" Jim called out in a feverish panic. Just then, the lights flickered ominously, then went out again, plunging them into darkness. A third gunshot rang out, and then another, louder this time. The officers shouted, voices mixed with confusion and urgency. "Everyone stay calm! Back up!" Sophia's eyes widened, tears streaming down her cheeks as the reality of their situation dawned on her. "Jim, I never wanted you involved. I thought—" But before she could finish, a scream pierced through the noise, sharper than glass breaking. A voice they all recognized. It was David. "We have to go now." In that moment of chaos, Jim took a step forward. "What's happening?" Suddenly, the last shockwave hit. Right behind the officers, Marcus emerged from the corridor, grinning like a wolf in sheep's clothing, blood smeared across his hands. "You thought you could hide from me forever, Jim?" he taunted, eyes dark and twisted. The murmur of disbelief rolled through the room like a tidal wave. You did this?" Jim's hands were shakes of anger, fists tightening. "Of course, you thought you could protect her, that I'd leave you in peace after all these years?" Marcus's smile grew wider. "But secrets, Jim, they have a way of finding you." Before anyone could react, a piercing explosion shook the very foundation of the courthouse. A wall shattered, sending debris flying. Everyone hit the ground, a body colliding with Sarah's as she fell. Instinct took over. Fear morphed into action as adrenaline surged through her bloodstream. Amid the chaos, Jim cried out, "Sophia, get down!" "No!" she screamed, reaching for him, panic written all over her face. But it was too late. The moment hung, suspended like a single drop of rain before a downpour. With a violent crash, the roof above started to buckle, timbers cracking. The truth emerged, not just the secrets between them, but about Jim himself. As the dust settled and chaos ensued, Sarah caught a glimpse of what lay in the shadows. A flash drive, glinting under the low light. In that second, clarity struck. What had Jim been hiding all along? Had he been playing a game from the very start? Just as she reached for it, the ground shook. A reverberation of truth and revelation splintering the air. All she knew shattered around her. "Stop!" she cried out, disoriented. Light and shadows collided. But it was too late. The world began to tilt. She barely noticed Sophia grab Jim's arm, eyes pleading as darkness engulfed them. Everything faded. What had been a fight for survival now spiraled into a nightmare of reckoning. Secrets clawed at their hearts, revealing truths that could break them all. And as the storm raged on, Sarah's mind raced, leaving one haunting question unanswered. What lives would be lost or destroyed before the truth finally surfaced? The darkness swallowed them whole, and for a moment, everything was suspended. Sarah's heart pounded, feeling every beat pulse through her veins. She couldn't shake the image of Jim, bloodied and shaken, standing in front of them. Everything was falling apart. The storm raged outside, a fitting backdrop to the chaos unfolding within the courthouse walls. "Jim!" Sarah cried, her voice a strangled whisper as she was torn between longing for him and fear of the truth that lingered like poison in the air. His eyes were wild, frantic, searching for something, anything to hold on to amidst the spiraling chaos. Sophia stepped closer, her expression shifting from shock to fierce determination. "We need to go, now," she urged, glancing frantically to Ah. "We can't leave him!" Sarah shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. But as she tried to fathom a way to bridge the distance between them, the building shook with another powerful blast. A gunshot? A thunderclap? She couldn't tell. "Look out!" David shouted, pulling Sarah back just in time as a chunk of plaster rained down from the ceiling. It was like the walls were finally giving in to the mounting pressure of their secrets. "Get Sophia!" Jim yelled, his voice strained. "She's the only way!" Carlos's eyes widened, fury brewing in the depths. "What do you mean? She's your sister, Jim!" "How could you leave us in the dark?" Before Jim could respond, a white-hot flash illuminated the room, and as time slowed, Sarah caught a glimpse of something unseen, someone lurking in the darkness behind Sophia. It was just a fleeting shadow, but it sent a chill racing down her spine. "Jim, watch out!" she screamed. But it was too late. A sharp pain erupted in Sarah's chest as a high-pitched scream rang out, a loud, chilling echo that seemed to slice through her very soul. It was Sophia. The shadow moved in an instant, and then everything went black. When the lights flickered back on, chaos reigned. Sophia was gone, a gaping hole where she had stood, now a dark void filled with confusion. An inconceivable dread filled the room. Where is she? Jim cried, panic spilling over into fury. "What did you do?" "I didn't," Carlos started, but his words faltered as the rest of them turned, searching for clues in the wreckage. The gunshots resumed outside, the storm crashing harder against the windows. An officer shouted from the door, his silhouette framed by the flicker of lightning. "Get back! You're all in danger!" Suddenly, the breath left Sarah's lungs as she realized something horrible. "Jim!" Her voice was a frantic gasp. She didn't just disappear. Did she? Did you let her go? But Jim's expression shifted from anger to a haunting realization. She was right. They want her. They always wanted her. "What are you talking about?" David demanded, stepping closer, eyes brimming with confusion mixed with dread. In that split second, the pieces slid together in Sarah's mind like a jigsaw puzzle, filling gaps with horrifying clarity. "You knew," she whispered, heart sinking. "You knew, and you didn't tell me." The storm outside roared, drowning out the silence that enveloped them. But then the radio crackled to life again. Hushed voices spilling into the room. "We have the suspect," an officer shouted, panic lacing his tone. "It's the wrong man. Get back up. We need to go. The words hung heavy, sinking the pit of her stomach down to a chasm of despair. What wrong man? Who had they been chasing? Had Jim played them all like pawns in a twisted game, and they hadn't even seen it? A cold dread froze her, and just as she felt her knees beginning to buckle, another thunderous crash split through the room, the distant sound of an explosion. This was bigger than all of them, and suddenly a truth emerged, shocking and painful. Sophia wasn't just an innocent woman caught up in their lives. She was part of something deadly, and Jim had been in it too deep. They had fought, risking everything to keep their secrets safe. "Jim," she breathed, despair flooding her senses. "What haven't you told me?" But the answer hung in the air, unspoken and potent, as the storm outside unleashed its fury, threatening to consume them all. What lay behind the truth, and what consequences would they face now that the past had finally caught up with them? The storm's rage echoed in Sarah's ears, a pounding reminder of the chaos unraveling around them. Jim stood frozen. I didn't know, Sophia. I swear I didn't know you were alive." Jim's voice trembled with raw emotion. He was unraveling, and she could feel the tension rippling through the room. "I had to find you," Sophia yelled, tears of frustration carving tracks down her cheeks. "I thought I'd lost you forever." "We don't have time for this," Carlos shouted, eyes darting to the door. "Look, we need to get out now. They're coming." Another crash reverberated through the courthouse, shaking dust from the ceiling. Sarah felt her stomach lurch. She had never felt fear like this, a cold grip that clutched at her heartbeat. Then came the rush of officers, faces grim, weapons drawn. "Get back!" they shouted, their voices blending with the howl of the storm. A cacophony of shouts followed, drowned by the distant sound of thunder. "Everyone stay calm," one officer yelled, but the chaos was already swelling. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness. Heartbeats thundered in the silence, a collective pause weighed down by uncertainty. In the thick shadows, something shifted. A flash of movement, quick and deliberate. Just as quickly as the lights returned, a figure emerged from the chaos. A woman, her face obscured by rain-soaked hair, twisting the door as she entered. It was someone none of them expected. "Sophia!" the woman cried, voice filled with panic. It was Angela, Jim's ex-girlfriend, her figure trembling as she stumbled inside. The atmosphere turned electric with confusion. She was supposed to be miles away. "I was looking for you." "Angela?" Jim stepped back, shock splintering his face. "What are you doing here?" Before she could answer, the door slammed shut behind her, isolating them in urgent silence. "You have to listen to me," she pleaded, eyes wide with fear. "They know you're here. I saw them. We need to leave before they—" Another sound erupted from the outer corridors, shouts mixed with sirens. The panic in Angela's eyes matched their own. "It's not just Marcus," she gasped, breathless from running. "He's not working alone. There's a whole network after us." And then Sophia gasped, clutching her head as if struck. "You don't know. You can't just—" But the momentum was heavy. Everything fell silent as the reality settled. Sarah felt the world tilt again. Angela was Jim's dark past, an unresolved thread now woven into the chaos. Then, with a sudden jolt, Sophia screeched, "No! You can't take him!" Her voice rose, piercing through the noise. "You're the one who put him in danger." "What?" Angela snapped back, eyes narrowing with accusations. "You're the one who came back and unleashed this. You have no idea what you're doing." But it was too late. The walls shook again, feet pounding down the corridor. Louder and closer. "We have to go." Now, they're inside. Carlos grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her toward the back exit. Just then, the distant voice of the sheriff blared through the chaos, cutting sharply like glass. "Everyone out, now!" "Run!" Jim shouted, urging Sophia ahead of him as they rushed toward the door. And then, in one breathless moment, everything changed. As they barreled through the hallway, a sharp crack filled the air, gunfire shattering the night. The unmistakable sound of glass breaking echoed behind them, panic rippling through the crowd. "Jim!" Sarah screamed, tearing free from Carlos's grip. She turned just as chaos erupted. Jim and Sophia were thrown back, colliding with the wall, the light glinting off something shiny. An object, a weapon, dangerously close. In that moment, as the darkness cloaked everything, Sarah felt her heart freeze. She made a desperate choice, leaping forward to shield them. But the image that met her eyes was shocking. A truth buried that none of them could escape. Angela, standing there, her gun aimed with precision, eyes wild and desperate. "I won't let any of you take him. Not again!" The air turned thick with disbelief, a shocking betrayal coursing through the room. What had she done? Who had Angela really become? As sirens blared louder, thunder clapped overhead, drowning them in panic and fear. Had their fight ignited a war they couldn't win? Questions spiraled in the chaos. Was Angela an enemy or a savior? The lines twisted, the storm outside mingling with their tempest inside. Everything changed in an instant. What would happen now? And as darkness closed in, the truth loomed just out of reach, dangling over them like a sword ready to fall. Would they survive this night? Would any of them ever escape the web of secrets now closing in around them? The air was thick with tension. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. Sarah stood frozen, eyes locked on Angela's gun, the weight of terror pressing against her chest. "What are you doing?" she gasped, desperation creeping into her voice. Jin's face twisted in disbelief. "Angela, put the gun down. This isn't you." But the anger in her eyes was fierce, a storm brewing that no one could calm. "You don't get it. You think you're the hero? You're just a cog in a bigger game." Outside, the storm raged, lightning flashing, illuminating the dark corners of the courthouse. The rain pelted against the windows like a furious chorus to their chaos. Time felt suspended, every second stretching into eternity. "Please," Sophia pleaded, tears staining her cheeks. "Just let us go. We can figure this out." But Angela shook her head fiercely. "You don't understand. Jim is mine. He always has been." Sarah felt a pang of betrayal cut deep, a yearning for the trust they'd shared. "You're lying!" she cried out. "You can't control him like this!" A crack echoed, the sound of the door shattering under the force of pounding footsteps. In rushed the flashlights of many officers, illuminating the room with blinding brightness. Shouts filled the space, the chaos igniting like a match in the dry grass. "Freeze! Drop your weapon!" an officer barked. But the scene was spiraling too fast. In a fraction of a second, Jim surged forward, reaching for Angela. "Get down!" he yelled, dangerously close to her line of fire. "Wait!" Carlos shouted, springing into action, aiming to shield everyone from the impending danger. But the tension snapped with a sudden, cruel twist. Angela pulled the trigger. The sound of the gunshot rang out, ricocheting off the walls. Sarah's heart dropped, a visceral fear clawing at her insides. But then, it wasn't Jim who fell. It was a figure behind him, a dark silhouette bursting through the doorway, arms flailing, struggling to stay upright. "Angela, no!" Sophia screamed, shock morphing into horror. It was Officer Daniels, caught in a moment of fate, stepping in front of Jim, just as the bullet found its mark. Daniels. David shouted, rushing forward as the officer collapsed. Blood blossomed on his shirt, spreading like crimson ink on a page, soaking into the ground beneath them. The realization hit hard, a wave of collective dread crashing over them. "What have you done?" Jim's voice cracked, his face paling as he bent near the fallen officer. "He was just trying to help." Angela dropped the gun, horror etched on her face. I didn't mean to." But chaos exploded. The air thickened with screams, and every pair of eyes darted around in panic. The officers outside shouted frantically, their voices blending with the thunder. Then, in that moment of chaos, Sarah felt the ground beneath her tremble. A rumble, like a warning before an earthquake. Something shifted in the shadows, and then an unexpected crackle of electricity filled the air. "It's a trap!" A voice boomed, deep and resonating, sending shivers down her spine. In an instant, the courthouse lights flickered violently, flickering between darkness and blinding light. The walls trembled, the noise growing deafening. A whirlwind of confusion ensued. "Get down!" someone yelled. But in the midst of the storm, Jim, frozen in horror, had a dawning realization. "Angela, who put you up to this?" Just then, an eerie sound sliced through the chaos. A siren. Louder and menacing, echoing the clamor of a world igniting. Suddenly, the back doors swung wide open, and a barrage of masked figures entered, weapons drawn, stealth and certainty in their stride. They were the same shadows that had haunted Jim's past, and now they were here, storming in as if they owned the place. A stunned silence rippled through the room. Relationships hung by a thread, and the air crackled with unspoken truths. "You've all been pawns." Sarah's jaw went slack. It was someone she never expected. The local mayor, someone who'd been hiding in plain sight. Everything was part of the plan, he sneered, eyes glinting with malice. "Every one of you. And now the game ends here." As Jim's world twisted, shock pulsed through them all. What had once been a simple fight for survival spiraled into a web of deception much larger than any of them had imagined. "What are you talking about?" Sarah hurtled forward, consumed with dread. "This can't be what it looks like." But just as the truth threatened to unveil itself, another gunshot rang out, this time from the mayor's gun. Everything shattered as the chaos erupted afresh. Who was truly in control now? As she fell to the ground, heart racing, one question burned through Sarah's mind. Had they ever been free at all? Or was this all part of a deadly play, choreographed long before any of them had stepped onto the stage? The gunshot rang out, piercing through the chaos like a knife. Time fractured in that instant. Everything hung suspended. Breaths held, hearts pounding. Jim's back jerked as if struck, his eyes wide in disbelief. "Jim!" Sarah screamed, lunging forward at the sight of blood blossoming on his shirt. The sound of the officer collapsing filled the air, but her focus narrowed on Jim, the fear caving in around her like a vice. "What have you done?" Jim cried, despair spilling from every word. The truth was unraveling around them, exposing the fragile weave of their lives, and panic surged in the depths of Sarah's soul. Angela dropped the gun, eyes wide and trembling, the anger melting into horror. I didn't mean to." Her voice was shaking, breaking beneath an end. "Get back!" the officer shouted, urgency flooding the room as more figures stormed in. The air was charged with frantic energy. Flashlights danced wildly, illuminating the expressions twisted in fear. Sophia clutched her stomach, tears streaking down her cheeks. "First you, now him." Her words trembled with anguish, the weight of realization crushing her. "What have we done?" Then came the rumble, deep and ominous. The walls vibrated. The very ground beneath them quaked. It was more than the storm outside. It felt like something larger, something hidden in the bowels of the courthouse. "Run!" Carlos shouted, his voice barely breaking through the cacophony. "We need to get out now!" But just as they turned, a loud crash shattered the pandemonium. A section of the ceiling buckled and fell, dust and debris cascading down like a rain of death. "Everyone down! Move!" an officer roared, diving to cover Sophia. Jin spun around, shielding her with his body. "No! Save yourself!" he shouted. And then it happened. A blinding flash of light erupted, a shock that reverberated through them all. It was like the heavens ripped open. A wave of energy surged, swallowing sound, light, everything. When the light faded, everything changed. Disoriented, Sarah blinked, gasping for air, as if surfacing from deep water. The scene before her had transformed. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. Where was the chaos? The officers? Carlos? Jim? "What just happened?" she mumbled, panic clawing at her throat. She looked around, realizing she was alone in the room, the once crowded space now barren. Then she heard it. A voice, soft and familiar, echoing from the shadows. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." She turned, eyes wide, disbelief washing over her as another figure emerged from the depths. The mayor, grinning with an unsettling calm, untouched by the chaos. "You?" she breathed, every instinct screaming for her to back away. "What are you doing here? What's happening?" He walked closer, confidence radiating from him. "Oh, Sarah, you've been so focused on them. You never saw the bigger picture, did you?" Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The shattered clues of betrayal, the twisted relationships, the web of lies binding them all together. You all were more important than you could have imagined. Your connections, your pain, it was all part of a plan. He paused, his gaze sharp. "And now you're the only one left to finish it." Her heart raced, each pulse a frantic plea to make sense of his words. "But we're all in danger! You have to help us!" "No, dear Sarah." He smiled, chillingly calm. "You're standing at the center of it all. You're the linchpin, the final piece of my puzzle." As the truth loomed heavy, shadows crept in, the faces of lost friendships, shattered trust, and the weight of secrets unveiled. And suddenly, doubts flooded Sarah's mind. What else had she missed? "Join me and we'll reshape this town," he beckoned, his tone inviting, yet predatory. "Together, we can bring everything out into the light." The urgency thickened, fear clawing at her heart. "You mean we can't escape this?" He stepped closer again, voice low. "No, Sarah, this is just the beginning." The chamber trembled once more. "You're either with me or against me," he whispered, his presence swallowing her whole. And as she braced against the tide of uncertainty, the weight of the moment gripped her heart. Who really controlled their fate now? And what would she sacrifice to discover the truth that could twist everything she had ever known?